think Harvey knew what he had. He absolutely knew what he had in Chasing Amy, but it hadn't even premiered yet, hadn't even screened to a large audience yet. So Kevin was nervous about it. And so Harvey offered him a deal for his next movie. But there were stipulations, you know.
This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. Learn more at indiefilmhustle.tv. I'd like to welcome to the show David Klein, man. How you doing, David?
I'm good, Alex. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, brother. I'm doing great, man. We've been trying to get this ready and recorded for months now at this point, but you're a busy man. You're working on Boba, you're working on Mandalorian, you're saving the world little by little. So
I don't know about all that, but the first two things are true.
Exactly. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to the tribe, my friend.
Absolutely.
So first questions I have for you, man. Why in God's green earth did you want to get in this insanity that is this business?
Probably because I didn't know that the hours were going to be what they are.
No one told you that. No one told you. In other words, you didn't have this podcast back in the 90s.
I thought it was going to be hanging out with cool, famous people, and doing cool stuff, which is true. These things are true, but man, the hours are crazy. They're absolutely just insane. But to answer your question, I always was into movies. I think it was Blade Runner. I know it was Blade Runner that my father took me to when I was 13 or so, and he took me to the drive-in. We watched it at the drive-in.
Nice.
And I remember leaving and saying to him, Dad, I think I want to make movies. And he's like, sure, kid, whatever, do whatever you want to do. And he was fully supportive, and he actually helped me. My grandfather gave me this 60 millimeter Bolex when I was young, and my father, at the time we had the VHS camcorder that would actually plug into the VCR that you had to take with you, from the top of the TV.
Yep.
And so I had those two devices, and started making, stop animation films. And funny enough, I when I was a kid, I ordered that special edition Boba Fett, which you take like the box tops from General Mills, I think it was. And you got a check from my dad and you send it to somewhere in Minnesota or wherever it was. And you wait like 8 to 12 weeks, and you're supposed to get this little Boba Fett that comes with a rocket that shoots out of its back, right? And it shows up weeks and weeks later, and the fucking rocket's glued into its back, right? So I blew the holy hell out of that thing when we were making one of these little 16 millimeter stop animation films. And, I think it's fitting that I would end up on some of these Star Wars shows after that.
And how much would that Boba Fett be worth today?
I think about $18,000.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, that's a good return on investment, I think.
I guess so.
Man, listen, we all do things to our Star Wars stores when we were younger. Who would have known?
Funny. Yeah, my dad used to help me with those, those rockets, the little model rockets that he'd send up.
Yeah.
They'd shoot off, and a little parachute go up. And so one day I took one of the engines to him, and I said, Dad, if I cut the nozzle off of this thing and put a wick in there, will it just explode? And he was like, come again? And I think he thought maybe I should help you out. And, so he became my grip, my gaffer, my special effects man, everything.
That's amazing.
He was not in the business, but he was no slouch when it came to helping his kids out.
Did you ever invite him on any of the sets that you worked on?
I did. I don't think he ever, he passed a few years back, and I don't know that he ever really understood what I do.
Same here.
But there were some times, I was doing a show in Hawaii, actually, and I think that's why he came. But he came to set, and he, spent a week on and off the set and had a good time, but still, I don't think it sunk in what precisely my job is.
Yeah, my dad. I invited my dad onto a set a commercial set I was directing, a commercial, and he just was like looking around, and he went back and told his family and friends, everyone just listens to Alex. That's all. Everyone. He says something, and they move. That's all I know. I don't understand.
That's
still to this day, he still doesn't understand what I do.
Right.
Let alone this. This is insanity.
Well, for sure. I think at times I don't understand what I do. You know what I mean? I still have so much to learn.
Now, so when you started off in your career, my friend, you started off on a little film, little black and white movie called Clerks, with a little unknown director named Kevin Smith and an unknown producer named Scott Mosier. Now, we've had the pleasure of having Scott on the show as well, so I've heard it from his perspective on how a lot of this stuff went down. How did you get roped into this insanity that was Clerks?
Well, it started the way so many stories start, Alex. I followed a girl to college, right? and about 2 weeks after we got there, she dumped me for another young woman, which, totally understandable, even cool now. At the time, for an 18-year-old young man, it was heartbreaking, right? And so I was like, fuck this place, man. I'm going to film school, which I had always wanted to do anyway, but didn't have the courage, I guess, to go and just go for it. And so I found the Vancouver Film School, which used to advertise very heavily in American Cinematographer, which is where I saw it. And they have a sister school now, which is the Los Angeles Film School here in LA on Sunset. They're almost identical programs. At the time, there was just the Vancouver Film School, and it was a 1-year program, and they had a class that started every 2 months. So every other month, a new class started. And this young lady that broke my heart put me on a path to end up in the same class with Kevin and Scott. Had it not been for her and all that timing, which, is the luck part of how you get into this business and what put you where you are, I guess. She was the luck part of it. And she put me in the class with Kevin and Scott. Her time put me there. And to be honest, after, Kevin dropped out halfway through the program to save the rest of his tuition for the movie. Right. And Mosier and I finished. And the reason they wanted to bring me on to Clerks, truth be told, is because they didn't want a cinematographer who knew more than they did. And, I had focused more into the cinematography aspect at the Vancouver Film School, but still, it was a 1-year program. How much can you learn in 1 year of hands-on? Not a whole lot, but I think the biggest compliment I got from Clerks was when we were doing the regular 16 millimeter 235 blow up. We did it at a lab called Gafanti Film Lab or Gafanti Filmworks in New York, and the biggest compliment I got was that I exposed the film properly and really well.
I mean, from my point of view, I've watched Clerks multiple times in my life. It's exposed. I mean,
you're right about that, Alex. It is exposed.
It is exposed. You didn't underexpose. You didn't overexpose. I mean, it's man, you exposed. And what's so fascinating, and for people listening, the youngins listening, you shot this on 16, not even Super 16, just straight 16, right? Or was it
regular 16?
Regular 16. MOS? No, it wasn't MOS. It was sync.
No. It was sync sound, and we got all the the camera equipment and the audio equipment from a guy named Mike Spera, who had a little company called Pro Camera, I think, at the time. And he actually went on to run the studio in Astoria.
The big one over there.
Yeah, exactly, for quite a few years. And I ran into him all those years later when Kevin and I were there doing Cop Out, which was kind of cool. But it was basically all we could afford. This Aeroflex SR, just an SR.
Oh, it was a straight up
SR1, straight up SR1. And it was all we could afford. I think we had $3,500 for all the, camera equipment and audio equipment for the run of the show, which was about 4 weeks. And so he's like, "That's the one you get." And it sounded like a machine gun. It did. And I mean, we had the little Barney that comes with it. We also had, I would end up operating the camera with that Barney and just leather jackets and all sorts of blankets and whatnot on my head, just so we weren't recording the sound of that machine gun on my camera.
Right, because did you have a blimp or you didn't have a blimp?
We had just the standard that goes over it,
but nothing
kind of leather thing.
Which was useless, essentially.
It was relatively useless. All the sound is coming out of the lens. You know what I mean?
Right. I'll tell you what. When I was in film school, the camera I got to use was the SR3. And that was that. Whoosh! We were the first.
Well, that was slick, man. I mean, but I think by the time we shot Chasing Amy Super 16 on an SR3. That was a great camera. That was one of the best 16 millimeter cameras out there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, solid. And you could hook up your laptop to get like reports and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that was like the big thing. Like you could hook up a laptop.
I remember that. I remember not with the SR3, but I remember plugging my laptop into a 535 and doing the speed changes and that sort of thing. And it was that black and white MacBook Pro, not even a MacBook Pro. It was a black and white MacBook with a 110 megabyte hard drive. You know,
which was screaming back then.
Oh yeah, you think I'll never fill this up? I send emails bigger than that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So all right, so I have to like the ins and outs. I mean, you guys shot that movie if I remember correctly, it was like a few weeks, or was it a month?
It was 4 weeks really, but you know, it was all nights. You know, that's why Kevin wrote into the script that somebody jammed gum in the locks because we couldn't have the store during the day, and so we shot nights, and we had the store from about, I want to say we had it from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. You know, so they were short, but you know, we would shoot, and then Kevin would actually work at the store, either the community store or the video store, all day, and then he'd find maybe a little time for sleep. A little bit of sleep, and then we'd get right back to shooting. So it was more days than you would expect, but they were shorter. You know, shorter.
I mean, I remember when I was coming up and I would walk on set as a director, man. Early on, you just don't know what you don't know. So luckily for you, was there anybody on set that knew more than you about the camera department, or were you the top of the hill at that point?
I was the top of that very small hill, and I was the entire department. So, you know, operating the camera, pulling focus, and you know, we had
lighting too, right? Or did you do grip and lighting?
We had a little help. You know, there was a cat named Ed Hapstack who was a friend of Kevin's, and he would show up, and Vinny Pereira would show up. But they had day jobs too. You know what I mean? So they'd come in and out. People got to work. But whenever we would we'd burn through a mag, we would shut down, and I'd go into the tent and change. You know, I'd reload a new mag and unload the current mag.
Oh, God.
So. It was a one-man department, you know.
Oh my God.
It's also why, if you look at the credits for Clerks, the boom operator is credited as whoever grabbed the pole first. You know what I mean? Because it was literally whoever grabbed it. I wish I carried a camera around back then, a still camera, because there was one scene where Mosier and Ed Hapstack and I were in the shot. We play the three people that run out from the funeral home after that whole business goes awry, right?
Yeah.
And so it was the three of us, and Kevin were there. And so Kevin was literally operating the camera, sitting on the ground in the street. He had the Niagara down, you know, by his thigh. And so he's holding the boom, he's operating the camera, and there's the three of us running in the shot. But I just wish I had a photograph of Kevin sitting there with the SR1, with the boom pole, which was, I think it might have been a hockey stick actually, with the microphone attached to it. And one-man band at that point, you know.
So, and I know he bought or rented a Steamback and edited the whole thing old school because
right there in the back of the video store.
Right. So I'm assuming you were there for part of that as well.
Just the very beginning, and then I was out. I had to go get a job too. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, because I'm sure you didn't get rich off that first job, as far as checks are concerned.
Not at all.
So Clerks comes out, man, and I'm imagining, what do you think was going to happen? Seriously. Like, I mean, from a DP's point of view, when you do a show like that, you're not going to go, this is going to go national. This is going to blow up. It's going to become a phenomenon. I'm assuming that's not what you thought.
No, it's not what any of us thought. I think at best we thought that it would be a calling card to a studio or a small production company to say, hey, these guys can get a film made. Let's hire them to do the next one, which, you know, that did happen, and so much more. You know, we didn't expect it to go to Sundance and be the little sleeper hit that it was. You know, it took off like crazy. And to be honest, for me, eventually it was a deep hole to climb out of, because to have a movie that's successful and look like that is not great for a cinematographer. The same thing happened years later with Chasing Amy, which is a wonderful film, and I stand by it to this day. But it doesn't look great. It's not well lit. It's not well lensed. We barely moved the camera, aside from some of the many arguments in the movie. But it was a successful film that didn't look that great. So again, as a cinematographer, that was a hole to climb out of, for sure.
Yeah, because I guess you were like, oh, this will be a little thing. I can maybe show it around a little bit. No one's ever really going to see this. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm known for this. Like, oh, you're the DP of Clerks.
Right.
And so that was a bit of a challenge.
It was a struggle. It was a struggle. Not as much as I might be jumping ahead, but when Chasing Amy was at Sundance, it wasn't in competition. It was just a premiere. And, we had done Mallrats in between, and Mallrats had been largely kind of ignored. It has since, I think, found a huge audience, but at the time it had been ignored. And so Kevin and the rest of us were nervous. We were nervous about what was going to happen with Chasing Amy. And so, Kevin and Scott had a meeting with the morally repugnant Harvey Weinstein before our screening. And Harvey, I think Harvey knew what he had. He absolutely knew what he had in Chasing Amy, but it hadn't even premiered yet, hadn't even screened to a large audience yet. So Kevin was nervous about it. And so Harvey offered him a deal for his next movie. But there were stipulations. Joey Adams, who was the lead in Chasing Amy, was going to be the lead in Dogma, and Harvey said no. He said that's one of the things. And he said, Joey's not going to be the lead, and Dave's not going to be the cameraman, and whatever else it was. Those are the two that I really remember, because after that meeting, we were all staying in this condo together, and Kevin takes Joey into a bedroom, and Mosier takes me in the bedroom and breaks the news to us, and then we all go to the premiere. So, it was a very surreal experience to have this audience just adore the movie. And, I'm sitting in the back row thinking, and I don't get to do the fucking next one. You know what I mean? So it was a kick to the gut, for sure. And then and Harvey kept me out for about 10 years. And in those 10 years, the first question I always got when I was in a job interview was, why aren't you shooting Kevin's current film? And I would tell them the story, and whether they thought it was true or not, or that I was being kept out just because I was too inexperienced and not good enough, it didn't matter. Right. Whether they believed this or that, it didn't matter. For one reason or another, I wasn't shooting his movies, and so I had to just get out there and fucking work. And so that's what I did. As I put myself on a 10-year plan when I moved to Los Angeles, and I said, if I'm not where I want to be and need to be in 10 years, then I'm going to go do something else. But I'm going to give it everything I've got for 10 years. And it took just about all of those years to finally, I think, get a grasp on the craft and being comfortable in what I could do with the crew and the set, and telling a story. That's what it's all about. You have all the experience in the world. If you don't know how to tell a story, it's irrelevant. It's all irrelevant.
It's fascinating to hear that story, man, because so many people looking from the outside in, must like, oh, well, you worked with Kevin and you did a couple of his movies, and then your career was set. And it's the complete opposite. It was actually, you had a hole to climb out of in the first movie, and then the second movie, or the third movie that you did with Chasing Amy, you weren't happy with visually. So it wasn't a great calling card for you visually. And then the movie that might have been the movie that would have taken you to the next level would have been Dogma, because you would have had a budget. It would have been a studio project, a real studio project. And it would have maybe opened up a lot of doors for you, but you literally had to hustle for the next 10 years to kind of whittle a niche in for yourself. So you could like, no, man, I can actually do this. For sure. And open those doors. It's a really great lesson for people listening, because it's like,
it's a good thing. It's a hard road to travel, because I had to learn as I was doing it. I think it's an easier path to work, under somebody with a lot of experience, because everybody you ever meet on a set or in life knows something that you don't, and you can learn something from them, especially on a film set. If you work with somebody who's got a lot of experience, you're going to learn so much just by watching, just by, watching what they're doing. Yeah, exactly. And so to learn it on the job was rough. And there are a lot of rough looking projects that I did. You know, I don't think it was until 1999 when I really started to figure out that, oh God, I want to say how to light, but who knows how to light it.
Until you found a groove that you felt comfortable in and felt comfortable with the quality of the work that you felt from your own eye that you were comfortable with. Like, I feel like I'm getting a grasp of this. I mean, like I've talked to so many cinematographers over the years, man, and all of them say the same thing. It's an impossibility to master the craft 100%. There's just so much to understand and learn. And then you look at someone like Deakins, and you see what they're doing. They are arguably masters at what they do, but you could probably count those on one or two hands that are alive.
Yeah.
That are just at that level. That are just like it's like looking at a director and going, oh, Chris Nolan, David Fincher. You're like, they are at the top of their game. Like there's very few of those people. Spielberg, there's Cameron. There's very few of these kind of people in the world. So it's tough. I have to ask you though, man, when you were during those 10 years, did you ever get pushback from crew people? You're like, oh, that's the guy who did Clerks. Did you ever get any shit, any like crap out of that?
I don't think so.
Good.
I don't remember any. If it was behind my back and I didn't hear it out. So I'm sure that this fucking guy shot Clerks.
This guy shot Clerks. Oh Jesus!
I'm working funny for movie, but did you see that? Did you see that garage band of a movie? Which you know the story, Alex. The reason it's black and white is because we couldn't afford to balance the lights. We were going to be shooting. We were going to be shooting fluorescent, and we had a little tungsten kit, and it was going to be mixed all over the place, and we didn't have the money to either gel the fluorescence or even get like an HMI package or a proper Kino package or any of that stuff. So we shot black and white, which is what gave it, I think, that garage band aesthetic, which I love. And
great.
Now I can sit back and watch it and just adore that movie. But for a long time, it was rough.
And that's the thing. It is. I mean, you look at the movie now, and it's just it's beautiful, man. It's wonderful. It is that garage band. It's that raw, unfiltered, just in all aspects, from the writing to the acting to the cinematography to the directing, all of it. And it's but at the time, I understand your point of view. Look, Robert Rodriguez had the same issues with El Mariachi. He's like, no one was supposed to see this. This is just my test film, and you want to release it nationally? Are you crazy? So it's, a lot of those movies were like that. When I talked to Rick about Slacker, is the same thing. And Ed Burns with Brothers McMullen, like all these guys, when you guys were coming up during the 90s, it's just such a for people who weren't alive during that time, they'll never understand the magic of the 90s in the independent film space. It's a very special time from, I'm going to say, 1990 to 99. That decade will never happen again. Mm-hmm. And it had never happened before. And it was the Sundance decade. We call it it was a Sundance independent film decade. It was where VHS really started to come up. There was a market for these kind of, do you imagine? And I ask this to everybody, I'm like, if Clerks came out today, no one would even look at it. It would be gone. Maybe it could catch some fire because of the writing.
Yeah,
what Kevin
that's what that movie is. I think
it's all writing.
It is. It's all writing, and it could catch on. But if it came out today, it wouldn't look that way. You know what I mean? It would.
You would have shot it. You would have shot it on this.
It's easy enough to go get a camera that gives you a really, your iPhone, for example, is beautiful shooting HD, and what is it, 4K now even, and. It's pretty gorgeous, and it accepts mixed light, like the Alexa too. You shoot mixed light all day long, and it
low light, Jesus.
Mixed light, and it would have been so easy. You know what I mean?
No changing in the back, no changing the mags in the back.
None of that. There's a funny story where we shot the salsa shark scene, Clerks, and we had so little money. And Kevin wasn't happy with it one night, but we'd wrapped, and I had my fucking hands in the bag, in the tent. And he's like, let's reshoot that tomorrow. And I'm like, what do you want me to do with this film? Because he had decided we're going to reshoot it, and we had so little money. It was like, he's like, throw it out. We didn't even process it. We didn't want to spend the money to process and print, because that's the only, that's what we were doing back then. And so we tossed it out. So yeah, deleted scenes.
Deleted at the you should have kept it. He shouldn't have thrown it out. Should have just kept it and maybe develop it after Sundance.
But again, we were thinking, no one's going to see this, right?
Who's going to see this? Who's going to see
this? Reshoot it. Let's throw it out.
So after Clerks, you had this. It was, obviously a very big hit. It was a phenomenal. It was a phenom situation, and then you got an opportunity to shoot a studio movie, which was Mallrats, which had a bigger budget, arguably much bigger movie. What was it like jumping from the one-man crew to running a crew of people who obviously many knew more than you did, if I'm not mistaken? Is that a fair assumption?
Every one of them knew more than
the PAs knew more than you.
Absolutely, 100%.
How do you run a set like that, man?
Well, I think you've got to have a little bit of humility, and I was very upfront with everybody that I was turned on to and basically hiring, and I said, I remember saying to Andy Graham, who's a really good friend of mine. He's been a friend of mine since then, but I met him on that picture, and he was the focus puller. He since has become an operator, and he's operated for me on a lot of projects, and a lot with Kevin as well. But I remember telling him that I was green. I said, I'm green, man, and I'm going to fucking lean on you. And he said, this happens a lot. You're the first person that's ever said it. and so
That's awesome.
So I owned that, you know what I mean? And Mick McNeely was the gaffer who had just, one of our producers was Jim Jackson. He had just done Tombstone, and Mick McNeely was the gaffer on that. And so he introduced me to Mick. And I'm like, you did fucking Tombstone with Billy Frake? Yeah, come on board. And, I was the same way with him. I said, I'm going to lean on you, man, because I'm green. And I'm in this position. It's very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be in this position, but I really want to learn from you. And I learned a lot from Mick. And it was, across the board, every department, so I think you always have to surround yourself with people who know more than you, but I think you got to be upfront about it too, and don't try and hide the fact that you don't know anything when you don't know anything, because everybody's been there, we've all been there. And it's one of the things that a lot of people try to hide, and it comes out in really ugly ways.
Oh yeah, the ego, and they'd start snapping at people, because if you see people doing that, you could see that they're insecure.
Correct.
Insecure people are the loud ones. The quiet ones are generally not the ones you have to worry about.
No,
in that scenario. If there's a bar fight and there's a quiet guy stretching in the corner, that's the guy you got to quiet guy. That's the guy you got to worry about, not the guy swinging his
and not the guy that's all talk. It's exactly. The quiet guy in the corner.
It's the quiet guy. But when it comes to being on set, like there's a quiet when you don't need to show in that way. Like, I don't have to be blustering. Like, I know how to do this. And if you're that dude, you obviously have no idea what you're doing. You're extremely insecure. And I'm sure you've worked with directors like that, especially in oh God.
I don't think we need to get into that yet, but yeah, it's like, Alex Council, the showrunner of Homeland, he's in any room he's in, he's the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. He's also one of the most mild-mannered and soft-spoken. And so, when he's very thoughtful, and he'll talk about a scene when we're prepping or rehearsing a scene, and he's very quiet, and like everybody leans in to listen to what he's saying. You know what I mean? He never feels the need to be loud and this is, what I think, and that sort of thing. And, I run into that, you run into that all over the place. And like current position, working with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, they're the same way. They never feel the need to be the loud voice in the room. It's the quiet voice in the room that everybody listens to,
Yeah, and when you're working at that level, man, with that kind of caliber of people, they've done so much, each of them in their own right, that, and I'm sure you've had the pleasure of working with some amazing directors and collaborators over the years. You start seeing when people know what they're doing, they just are, they just do. They don't talk about it. They just very quiet, very like, why don't we move over here? Why don't we
Well, yeah, and also, I think at this level, Alex, there's an amount of preparation that's gone into everything, and
right.
I've done this enough times that I know that I have to be prepared. I have to be fucking ready, and whether that means knowing all the shots that we're going to do, or just understanding how we want to light the set to tell the story. You just have to be. I have to be prepared.
Now, after Mallrats, which you said, and I actually one of the 5 people who saw it in the theater.
I saw it in the theater. So who are the other 3? I guess
I know it must have been Kevin Scott. I actually saw it in the theater while I was in college, and I actually got it was a special screening, and I got the Mallrats got the book at the theater. They were handing them out at the theater. I never forgot this. The original book, I had it, and I saw Mallrats. I loved it. I thought it was genius when I saw it. I was like, this is the greatest thing I've seen since sliced bread. This is amazing. And then it died on the vine. It didn't find an audience at the time. So Kevin was pretty much put in director jail at that point, correct? No, he was like, oh, it was a fluke kind of thing.
Well, he had the script for Chasing Amy, and I think what happened is we went to Universal for this project, and Harvey always wanted to work with Kevin. He knew what he had in Kevin, and so Kevin had the script Chasing Amy, and he took it to Harvey, and he had a meeting without Scott Mosier, which may have been a little bit of a mistake, because Kevin agreed in that meeting to do it for a price, without any script changes, and so when he goes back and meets with Mosher, he's like, hey, I got our money. And Mosher's thinking, a couple, 3 million, 4 million, whatever. And he's like, great. What'd you get? He's like, 250 grand. And Mosher's like, come again? What? And so we ended up making that movie for 250 grand, which is, kind of it was a bummer at the time. We all wanted to make movies for more money, which means more time. That's what it means. It means you can actually take the time that you want to devote to each of the scenes, or more time anyway. You never have enough time. Nobody ever has enough time. Even on the biggest things I've done, it seems like we're always scrambling. It's crazy.
Right. Even if I'm assuming on a Marvel set they're scrambling still. I've actually talked to some people who've worked on those $100 million, $150 million budgets, and they're like, yeah, we stole this shot. I'm like, you stole a shot? What?
You guys were shooting for 130 days. Why did you have to steal this shot?
No, I think it was Cronenworth, Jeff Cronenworth on a Showtime network. He's like, yeah, I stole this shot and this shot. And I mean, David, like, it was just me, David, and like another guy. I'm like, because they needed a shot at Harvard and they couldn't get it, so they stole it.
Oh, that's right. I remember reading about that.
And I was like, what? Yeah. That's amazing. You can't forget your roots, man. You can't forget that hustle, man. You no matter how big you get, how many Oscars you win.
It's true. But anyway, so we ended up, we made that for 250 grand. And then what I already mentioned, what happened at Sundance, and I think that was 96. And I got pushed out for 10 years. I went and hustled. And at the same time, Harvey didn't let Kevin use the same cinematographer twice. Bob Yeoman shot Dogman. Bob Yeoman's an excellent cinematographer, and Harvey said no for the next movie. And so then Kevin did Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and it was Jamie Anderson. And Jamie Anderson, another great cinematographer, and Harvey didn't like the way that looked either. And so on Jersey Girl, gives him Bill Mosher-Sigmund. Ends up really not liking the way that looks either. So Kevin finally said, well, maybe it's not the DP, maybe it's the director that you're unhappy with. And so after that, Kevin was basically like, give me my guy back. And so he and I got back together for Clerks II. So we've been apart for 10 years, nine and a half, 10 years. And so we were bringing 10 years of experience of working with other people together to an existing friendship. And it was the greatest reunion I've ever had, and then we went on to do another 4 or 5 pictures. We did, after Clerks II, we did Zack and Miri Make, a Porno, and we did, Cop Out and Red Stain. We ended up doing a pilot or 2, and it was it was wonderful because it was bringing 10 years of experience and just getting back together. And we had a language from before, but we had a new way of telling stories from all this experience, and that coming together, I think created some of the best work that we've done. Culmination of which was Red State. I think it's our finest hour. You know, Kevin
Beautiful.
and
It was
I
a beautiful
together. Film. I love that movie. I love it so much. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. That was us getting back to our roots. And you know, I was Kevin and I actually wrote a letter to Stephen Poster, who was the president of the union at the time, to allow me to operate. You know, because that the union would have to allow this to happen, and you know, it's got to be a creative choice. It can't be budgetary, and it was absolutely creative. You know, we were trying to get back to where we'd started, and you know, Stephen understood that. Stephen has worked with Kevin actually, and you know, likes Kevin a lot, and so they agreed to it. The union agreed to it. So I actually operated the camera, and we were literally, you know, back to where we'd begun. And it was a much bigger project. It was $4 million, but you know, $4 million doesn't go as far in 2008 or whatever it was, 2009, 2010, as it did back in the 90s.
No question. And listen, man, after all the years that you've been doing this, is there anything you wish someone would have told you at the beginning of your career, besides beware of
besides Get Out?
Besides Get Out and beware of the morally repugnant Harvey Weinstein.
You know, I think, and it's probably one of the hardest things that I've had to learn, is that there's an elegance in simplicity. You know what I mean? Because when you're starting out, or when I was starting out anyway, I can't speak for other people, but when I was starting out, you know, I was really trying to light a scene to tell the story, and I think it was a lot of it was forced, you know, and it was just too much. And it took me a while to sit back and you know, when you're lighting a scene, you always got to look for the light to turn off, because there's always at least one. There's always at least one that is unnecessary and you don't need it, and it's not telling the story. It's just, you know, you're showing off, or you're being cute or something. But you know, I wish that's the lesson that took the longest to learn. I wish somebody would have told me that just fucking relax. And there's a real elegance in simplicity. And I think, you know, it's hard to describe. It's hard for me to describe what is simple or elegant in lighting, because I can't tell you why I light a scene a certain way. It all comes from the gut. And that's another piece of advice I wish I would have learned, that, you know, just follow your gut, follow your instinct, and don't second guess yourself. And even if you're wrong, just fucking do it. And you're going to learn from your mistakes. You know, if you are wrong, you'll learn from it. Go ahead.
Can you talk about the happy accidents? Because as cinematographers, man, and even their directors, we all want to control everything at all times, which is insane. It never happens, ever.
Yeah.
But there are these little things you're like, how did that was perfect. How did that light just hit the eye just right? The flare hit at the right moment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, some of the coolest things that I've learned have been complete and total accidents, you know. And when you're on a set, you have to keep your eyes open for these things, because, you know, electrician will be moving a light and it'll be on, and, you know, because it's an HMI and it's not going to hot restrike, and so they want to keep it on while it's moving, and it'll hit something that was completely unintentional, and it comes over here, and, you know, it's reflecting off of that. It's hitting the set, and you're like, fucking stop, just freeze where you are. That's what we want. And then the grips are like, oh, great, now we got to contain the rest of it. You know what I mean? So
the spill off here. It's
like, fuck. Turn those lights off when you're moving. Don't let them see the lights when you're moving around. You know, turn them off. But you always have to be open for that. And even in life, you're out at a restaurant, you're at a bar, you're at the movie theater, whatever it is. Pay attention to your surroundings, because there's always, you know, I learned so much about lighting from being in far too many bars in New York in the mid 90s. You know what I mean? They were all dark, and a lot of them were dive bars, and you would just see the way that these dimly lit bars had really cool things going on, you know. And you always have to be open for that, and keep your eyes open for it, because you can learn just as much sitting in a seedy dive bar in New York as you can being on a film set when it comes to lighting.
Now,
trust me, I've
been in some dive bars. I've been in some dive bars. No, you know, as a cinematographer, there's always a day on set where the entire world feels like it's crashing down around you. It could have been on Clerks. It could have been on Mandalorian. Is there a day that sticks out in your head that you felt like I shouldn't be here? I'm going to get fired. This whole thing's not going to work. And what did you do to kind of go through that and get through that obstacle?
I don't know if there's a day or a handful of days in particular, Alex, but it happens all the time. Happens all the time, and you just have to push through. There are so many times when it feels like the set's falling apart and you're behind schedule and you're not going to make your day and you're not getting the shots the way you want, but you just have to push through. You always have to push through, because it feels like that a lot. There was a point I was going for and I missed it. Ask me something else, man. I'll come back to that.
Well, I mean, I've been blessed to talk to so many amazing people on the show. I've realized that everybody, from the Oscar winner to the first time filmmaker, all suffer from imposter syndrome. Every single one of them. Even to this day, I'm talking to some Oscar winning screenwriter. He's like, yeah, I don't even know if this next script. I'm like, you just won the Oscar. What's wrong with you? Like, you just are like, you're considered one of the best writers ever. Like, why are you? Yeah. And he goes, I just do. And I think I came to realize that everybody deals with it. And I think it's something that kind of keeps you sharp. I'm assuming that you have the same issues as far as imposter syndrome on set.
Always. And yeah, you have to be, you have to be your most, your fiercest critic. You have to be your biggest fan. You have to be your biggest supporter. You have to be, your most critical eye against yourself, I think, because nobody knows what anybody else thinks. All you have is yourself. So, and you have to rely on all the people around you. Let me sound pretentious for a second. Quote, who was it? Orson Welles said that, a painter needs a paintbrush, a writer needs a pen, and a filmmaker needs an army. And it's true. And no cinematographer, no director, no filmmaker is an island. You can't do this alone. You know what I mean? You have to have this support, support system that is it's the most complicated and sophisticated recording device known to man. And a lot of times it is like being deployed. I did Homeland for 6 years, and we were for 7 months, either out of the state or out of the country, sometimes both within a season. And it is like a deployment. I can't equate it to going to war. I can't compare it to going to war. I've never been to war, but in my life's experience, it is like a deployment, and you're just in the trenches for 7 months, 8 months, and it's nonstop, and it's hard to remember sometimes to get out of the way, because if somebody looks at something this is probably paraphrasing, I think, Deakins, but if somebody looks at something that I've shot and says, wow, that's a great looking episode, that's a great looking show, that's a great looking movie, without talking about the story, then I've failed. I think it is
right.
My job as a storyteller to be almost invisible, and we should be the silence between the notes, and if somebody looks at something that I've shot, wow, that was a great story, then that's a success for everybody, for all of us. But if they single out the cinematography, the lighting, the camera work, then I don't think we weren't serving the story at that point.
Very true. A lot of times, especially, I don't know about you, but when I started out, I wanted a coolest shots, and the story was I want to do that Scorsese shot in Goodfellas. Yeah. I want to do that shot that Kubrick did. I want to do that shot that Spielberg did. Like we all do it. But as you get older, you start realizing, like, what's the story?
Yeah.
What's the story? Because before it was a lot harder to do those shots. It was super hard to do a lot of those shots back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. To do some of those insane shots that those masters did was difficult. Where now the technology has gotten to a place where, you could, with a Ronin, you can run around instead of getting a full giant Steadicam op, and you can you can do some insane shots, running in, jumping through, going through. Like there's things that you can do now.
Absolutely.
It's not the cool stuff anymore.
It's not, but there's still always the next level. There's still somewhere to take it, but it has to serve the story. I worked a lot during Mandalorian season 2. I worked a lot with Sam Hargrave. He was the main second director, and then he went on to do Extraction, and some of the stuff that he was doing and did in Extraction is absolutely insane. And it was a perfect blend of his background being a stuntman and becoming a second unit director and then a director, and combining that with all the new technology of the day. There's that scene, you look at the behind the scenes stuff where he's basically riding on a four-wheeler, on an ATV of some sort, and he's actually directing and operating the camera, and somebody chasing a car, basically going forward and then in reverse, and then somebody detaches him and he runs up and shoves the camera through the window, and then there was a takeover of some sort. They did a visual effect blend, going into the car, and then they're all of a sudden in the car in another shot. They blend it together and the car drives away. And so it was beautiful choreography, and it was like watching a ballet dancer, except it was more punk rock than that.
Well, I mean, there's always a place to take. I mean, look at that shot that Spielberg did in War of the Worlds inside the car, where the camera's just rotating around the car while the aliens are attacking and things are exploding. And you're just like, when you and I sit there going, how the hell did they do that? Then they've gone to another place. Yeah. Because
Children of Men, that driving shot of Children of Men.
Jesus. Right? I mean, you're just like, how did he do that? So it's pretty remarkable, man. Now I have to ask you about Mandalorian, brother. Like, you worked on season 1. No. You didn't work on season 1. You worked on season.
I came in season 2 as the second unit.
That's what I meant.
Second unit cinematographer to Baz Edwin and Matt Jensen. And so I was doing second unit, and Matt Jensen got a little overloaded with prep work, and so he turned episode 6 over to me, and that's when I met Robert. And I had gotten here. I'd gotten here from an introduction to Favreau through Leslie Lincoln Glatter, who was my main producing director on Homeland, and then Matt Jensen also brought me up, and so that's how I kind of came to be here. After season 2, Matt and Baz were going off to do their own things. They weren't coming back for their own reasons. And so I got, promoted to the main cinematographer on the Book of Boba Fett.
So I have to ask you some technical stuff, man.
Yeah.
How the hell do you light in the volume? Because I know I have a couple of buddies of mine who are VFX people who worked on Mandalorian season 1. And he was telling me that he's like, yeah, they shoot a lot, but there's still a lot of cleanup work that we need to do with some of the edges and the creases and things like that. That it's not all in camera, but it's a lot better than where it's not a green screen either. So there's a kind of happy medium. But how do you light that? I'm assuming there's not an HDMI off. Like, how do you do that? How do you light it?
It's that's a hard question to answer. It's kind of like asking how do you light anything? You know what I mean? It's got its own. It's a fucking process, Alex. It's a process.
I'm gonna just tell you, man, it's fucking hard, dude. It's fucking hard.
It is.
It's weird.
There's nothing easy about it. I think I had a lucky introduction to it in that, I was doing just a few days here and there during season 2. And so I was getting to know it, and I was able to watch Baz and Matt do their thing in the volume. And so I had a slow introduction to the volume in season 2, and then rolled right into Boba Fett shortly after that, and was thrown in the deep end, where there's a long prep. There was a long prep to Boba Fett. I think I was on for about 5 months before shooting started, and it has a lot to do with lighting the content that's going on the volume walls. And so essentially you're in the Unreal Engine, you're in a VR session, and you're lighting the content the way you would want to light it practically, and that's one thing that is always a sticking point at Fabro, because the tendency for a cinematographer when you get into a VR environment and a virtual lighting environment is to do whatever the fuck you want, because you can do just about anything. But you also have to match that in the practical set that's going to be inside the volume. And one of Favreau's things is like, don't light it however you could in a virtual environment. Light it how you would in reality, or else it's going to start to look like a video game. It's going to, you can put a source the size of the sun out there and do this, but could you do that if you were lighting this virtual environment? Practically, no, you couldn't. You'd have HMIs and whatever you're going to use, and that's also what you're going to use on the practical set. So, it starts with lighting the virtual environment and knowing how to bridge the gap between the virtual and the practical, because
you could actually move light sources within the volume itself, like meaning the VR aspect of it, the Unreal Engine. You could put a light somewhere in the virtual space that lights through the LEDs on, and there is an aspect to that, correct?
There is. You're not going to get directionality. You're not going to get hard light.
Right.
You're going to get a lot of soft light. You're going to get all the interactive soft light that you get from the environment. But any direct hard light, you're going to have to do practically. And so when you're doing it in the virtual environment ahead of time, you have to know that I'm not going to be able to do this entire wash of sunlight in here. I'm only going to be able to do this, these spots and these broken up bits of sunlight. So that's what I should do in the virtual, and then I'll do that also in the practical, with HMIs, or we've also gone into tungsten now with some of the loads. Started doing that on Boba Fett. Didn't know if it was possible or not, and I'd been told that it was not possible to go tungsten in the volume. But then I was talking to everybody from Stagecraft and ILM, and they said we can absolutely go tungsten. I don't know who told you that, and I, to be honest, don't remember who told it to me either. But once we started using tungsten light in there, I think it made everything feel a little more real, because it's a full spectrum light source, and it just kind of fills in all the blanks of the wavelengths, and it just made it all feel a little more real for me. The lighting of it anyway.
When I was talking to Dean Cundy, because he was on the show, and he was right before he was heading out to Boba. I think did he shoot Boba? Or did he shoot all the Mandalorian? Yeah, he did shoot some episodes of Boba. Yep. He was telling me that he was lighting outside the volume as well, getting some light spill. It's something like that, or am I mistaken?
No, you're not mistaken. One thing that we haven't been able to do, and I don't know that it'll ever be possible, is to do a broad, sunlight source, or open moonlight even. Anytime you want to just fill the volume with light, if that's what the scene requires, you need to take it outside. Because first of all, there's not enough room. It seems like it's a big space, but it gets very small very quickly. And if you did wash it with giant HMIs or big tungsten sources, the light's just going to bounce all over the LED walls and render them useless. So anytime we need open sunlight, anytime we need say the desert at night where it's supposed to be a moon source, we'll go on the back lot. But if we need pockets, if we need a skylight here and there shooting some sunlight in, then we have some parts of the ceiling that we can take out, big sections of the ceiling that we take out. And there's a lot of rigging up there, a lot of hardware to work around, and so there's still not a lot of space to get lights away from where they need to be, so you can have good shadows. And so we end up using mirrors a lot. So we'll have an opening in the ceiling that might be 5 by 10, 5 by 12, something like that. And then we'll have a big mirror up above, and then we'll have an HMI, a tungsten for now, whatever it is, another 15, 20 feet away, so that there's a good amount of distance from the light and whatever's cutting it, which is usually a gobo hanging beneath the opening in the ceiling, so that we're trying to get it as far away from the light as possible, so that we have good shadows. And there's just so much hardware to work around that it's difficult, but we've kind of cracked it a little bit, and are getting better at it as we learn more. Which, we're learning something every day that we're in there.
Right. It seems like from season 1 to season 2 to Boba, and now hopefully I can't wait to see season 3. It seems that things are you can just sense things are getting a little bit more real in the way it's shot. It just looks like the end sequence of the famous Luke Skywalker scene end of season 2. Like it's a masterwork. Honestly, that whole episode's a masterwork.
Absolutely.
It's an absolute masterwork. I've watched the end sequence 1,000 times because I'm a geek, and and I gotta ask, dude, seriously, man, you're of similar vintage as me, as far as age is concerned. So you gotta geek out every once in a while, dude. Like you gotta geek out every once in a time.
Oh, for sure, man. No, I'm turned into a 12, 13, 14-year-old very often on set. I mean, throw 10 stormtroopers in front of a camera and I'm 12 years old again. You know what I mean? It's the whole
a lightsaber pops up. You're just like, oh, forget it. I'm out. I can't.
It goes back to me blowing the hell out of that little special edition Boba Fett, man. I had all the toys. I have some of them in my office right now. Little baby Kleins, the Star Wars toys. You know what I
mean? That's amazing. But so you on Boba, you got to shoot with Robert. You shot for Robert Rodriguez, who is very well known for being his own DP. So what was it like shooting for Robert? Because Robert's not used to working with other DPs, generally speaking.
I'll be honest. He largely left me alone. I think he enjoys not having all the responsibility. Right. Because he still edits everything, and even when we were prepping, we were prepping remotely because it was the beginning of the pandemic, and so he was in Austin with his kids, and he was shooting basically animatics or stunt biz with his kids and with some of his old Star Wars toys from when he was a kid. So he's still very hands-on, but when it came to the how are we going to light this? How are we going to light the set? He had ideas that we would talk about when we were prepping and when we were lighting some of the virtual environments. But for the most part, he left me alone. He would like most directors, he'll tell me if he doesn't like something. But it wasn't like he was pointing me in a specific direction for lighting. He left me alone. Let me do my own thing.
He trusted that you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know if that's true, but he might think it is. So,
no, I think it was in one of the behind the scenes that Dave Filoni was like, he was seeing the animatic that you're talking about, and he's like, right. Can you stop it right a second? Did you just shoot an animatic with Star Wars toys in your backyard?
Yeah.
He goes, yes, I did. And he's like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I think that was the moment that the Book of Boba, he's like, wait a minute, let's bring Robert into the Book of Boba. And let's bring him into this because this is insane. And did you do the season 2 Boba episode or no?
I did. That was episode 6. That's the one that I did with Robert. Yeah, that's when we first got together.
Oh my God, dude, you gotta. I mean, okay, let's stop for a second, geek out for a second. When you saw Boba show up for the first time on set, you guys have to be 5-year-old at that point.
Absolutely. We are. That was a tough shoot though. And it was, I can't say it was anticlimactic, but we had shot a lot of the scenes with Boba Fett, on stage and on the volume prior to the when he first
introduction.
Showed up. Introduction. Yeah. And the introduction was done out in Simi Valley because it had, we just needed the travel. That scene needed the travel that you can't get in the volume. And it also needed that open sunlight. And so it forced us to go out to Simi Valley, and might be one of the reasons I got that episode because maybe Baz and Matt didn't want to go out there. It was not an easy shoot. It was rough. It was 5 or 6 days out there in Simi Valley. It was a lot of fun, but and like I said, I can't say it's anticlimactic, but we had already been introduced, and so I can't say that we were out there just to get it done, but there was a certain aspect of we got to get this done because we had a finite amount of time. And what's funny is we only had 6 stormtroopers out there.
Really?
Yeah.
You did an alien style where they only had 6 aliens.
Either that, or I mean, there are a lot of complete CG VFX stormtroopers.
Wow, really?
If you and they're really good. They are really good. It's because I think it's it's obviously much easier in VFX to do a stormtrooper than a human face. And there's one that I'll point out, and it's the last one to jump on the transport when the transports are taking off. That you can kind of tell. I
remember it. I remember
that one, right?
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the one that, and I think it was only because I knew, going in that was CG, and that only a portion of the rest of them that were jumping on the ramp were actual troopers.
It's pretty. That episode.
It's astounding.
Oh, it was so much fun when I saw that episode. When I saw that episode, I was just blown away by how cool it was, and you could tell it was the first time they were off the volume, right, in the whole series.
Well, not exactly, because there's a lot of backlot work. There's a lot of backlot work,
and not location.
Correct.
That was the first location. That's what it was. It was the first location.
It was the first location. You're right about that. And in Boba Fett, we had a lot of backlot, and we had one location, which was Huntington Gardens. We went to for a few days, 2 days, for episode 6, which was all the bamboo forest. The Luke Skywalker episode of Boba Fett.
I thought that looked familiar. Like I was watching, I'm like, damn it, man, that looks like Huntington Library.
We did 3 versions of bamboo forest in that episode. One was backlot, one was on the volume, and one was Huntington. And going back to, being the silence in between the notes, the bamboo forest that we did on the volume was some of that might have been the hardest volume load that we did in the entire season for many different reasons, but I think it blends in pretty well. And the fact that the transition from backlot to volume to Huntington is seamless, I think is one of the things that makes it successful. But it's also, like I was saying earlier, it's getting out of the way, and it's making that transition, invisible, and just having a sort of elegance and simplicity, I think.
Right. Well, man, congrats on all the amazing work you're doing with John and Dave up there in Northern California. You guys are doing some good work with The Mandalorian, and we're all super excited to see the new season coming out this year. I know, didn't you just finish? Is production not done now?
I can't talk about it. To be honest with you, I'm sorry.
I thought it was. I thought I read it somewhere, brother. Don't worry. No, I'm not trying to get you anything. No worries. I don't care. I thought I read that.
I've recently finished a season of a Disney Plus streaming.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, but no, seriously, man, congratulations on all the hard work you've done. And now knowing your backstory a bit more than I did before, man, I respect it even that much more, because I didn't know about the 10 years in the wilderness that you had to go through. Like you were out there.
That is Los Angeles. Yeah.
10 years in the wilderness trying to kind of carve your way and climb your way back out of the situation that the morally repugnant Harvey and those circumstances kind of hurt you on the way up. So kudos to you, man, for keeping up there. And hopefully this is a lesson for lessons for people listening, that like you got to hustle. Doesn't matter where you start or what happens. It happens, things happen that can slow your progression down in the season. And then you have to ask yourself, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
That's the question.
And like I was saying earlier about, advice to the young and up and coming. My father was an orthopedic surgeon. He would not let me be a doctor, because he was a doctor and his father was a doctor. My grandfather was a doctor, and they were never home. And so I chose a profession with hours worse than a fucking surgeon. You know what I mean? So you really gotta think long and hard about if you want to be in this business, because it takes a toll, and I've got a marriage that was destroyed. I have a 14-year-old daughter who, as she was growing up, from 6 to 11 or 5 to 11, I was doing Homeland, and I was gone 7 months a year. And so I turn around and she's 12, you know what I mean? And I'm like, where'd all that time go? I missed all that time. So, You got to think long and hard about it.
Yeah, it's something that they don't tell you in film school. No. They don't tell you that a lot of men, especially for DPs, even more so than directors, DPs are always working. They're not getting the fat, checks a lot of times, so they have to keep hustling. They got to keep working. They got to keep going, and that's time, man. And that does break up. I've known a lot of DPs whose marriages don't make it. It's tough. So you really got to love what you're doing. You really got to love what you're doing.
I remember being at a festival, a Hatch Festival in Bozeman, Montana, and they would always have a couple of cinematographers there. And one year I was there as one of the cinematographers, and Haskell Wexler was the other.
Oh.
And so we were speaking to a group of university students, and we were talking about the hours. And he was still promoting Who Needs Sleep, the documentary that he made about the working hours in the business, and we were talking about the hours. And one of the students, asked the question, how do you guys make it work? How do you have a life, live a life, and work these hours? And Haskell just goes, I'm on marriage number 3, you guys. Sometimes it doesn't.
Bam. Oh, yeah. That's a drop the mic moment right there.
It kind of is.
That's as raw and truthful as it gets. That's so awesome, man. That is so awesome. Now, I know you wanted to address the accidental shooting that happened on the set of Rust with your friend. Can you discuss that a little bit?
I'd known Helena for a short amount of time. About a year. She was a wonderful person. I thought she was a great cinematographer. I'd introduced her to some members of the camera department that were actually working with her on Rust. And I'll be honest, Alex, when we were first getting into this, it was so raw and I had a lot of emotional opinions about it. And I don't remember exactly what I wanted to say specifically. But I'm not, I did see a letter that was going around that was signed by a lot of cinematographers about no actual weapons ever again, no real firearms on set. Let's do it all VFX. And I'm not that guy. I've probably photographed 2 million rounds, obviously blanks in my day. And she was a friend of mine, like I said, not a long time friend, but she was a friend of mine. And it's a horrible tragedy what happened. But I think what needs to happen is there just needs to be a safety officer. There needs to be a position created that oversees all safety, because you can't put that on the ADs. You can't put that solely on the armorer. There has to be a checks and balances, and there needs to be a new position I think created that is safety. And we've seen it for the last 2 years. During the pandemic, we have safety officers that have been going around, and for the first year of it, it was put your face shield down, keep your mask on, put your face shield down. Mm-hmm. And now it's just masks, but still there has been an entire department created. So I think there should be a safety officer. There should be that at least that one position that is in charge of the things that we all think belong squarely on the shoulders of the ADs. You can't put it on them, because it's just not right. I think we need a new position that oversees all this stuff.
I'd agree with you on that, because working with ADs all my career, man, they can handle a lot, man. They handle a lot on their shoulders, and they should be one layer of protection. Yeah. But it shouldn't stop with them. So the AD should still have some sort of say in what's going on, and let everybody know. And when I'm shooting on set, they stop the set. Hey, we've got a live arm on set. Everyone be aware. This is it. This is that. I get that part, and the armor should definitely also have have some sort of another layer of protection. But there should be the last stopgap. Someone who just finally goes, "Let me see the gun. Let me check it, make sure everything's good. All right, and go forward." I've done both. I've worked with live rounds and I've worked with VFX, the airsoft guns. And, can it be done? Yeah, but
here's the problem I have with it, Alex. Even a quarter load blank or a half load blank, an actor doesn't react to the way they react to a full load blank. I don't like half loads. I don't like quarter loads. I like full load blanks because that gives them the correct reaction from the gun for them to respond to.
Naturally,
and that's exactly, and that's my main thing. And like I said, I hate it when people say, "Oh, I've been in this business for this amount of time." They usually lose me when they say that. But I have photographed a lot of blanks, of rounds of blanks, and never had an issue, never had a problem.
Well, I mean, listen, and I got called by Variety in Hollywood for, quotes and trying to, asking my opinion on what was going on. And I said, listen, guys, and they got this from a few other industry vets who said, how many stuntmen have been hurt in the course of the last 100 years on a set? Do we now do away with all stunts and do everything virtually? No, there's safety. There was mistakes. What happened in the Twilight Zone, that horrible accident that happened there. And there's so many other, you could list, accidents that happened in the stunt department. Things happen sometimes, but you can't just wash everything away like that.
You can't. And I sorry to interrupt you, Alex, but I'd be willing to bet that Condor lighting cranes have hurt more people in the last 10 years than stunts have. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
There are so many new new safety rules and regulations regarding condors all the time. I remember back in the day when they didn't need a harness.
I remember.
I mean?
Oh,
I remember.
Remember the cranes? How about the cranes when you're sitting down? Yeah. I mean, those long cranes with the camera at the top, and you would see the pictures. And I got up on one of those cranes once. I'm like, where's my seatbelt? Are you? No, I'm not doing this. I'll do this from the bottom. I'm not going to do this. This is insane.
Well, going back to the 90s, Alex, we used a lot of those cranes, the Chapman, the Titans, the Nikes, all this stuff, because they were so much cheaper when the remote heads were new. Remote heads were coming out in the late 80s, early 90s, and so they're very expensive. So we rode those cranes all the time, and there usually are seatbelts. But
mine was cheaper.
But you're up there, you're 50 feet in the air or whatever it is. You're like, wow, this is, it's the most treacherous thing I've probably done aside from, being in stunt cars, as a camera operator, being in stunt cars is pretty wild too. But a lot of that I've been, was more dangerous than any of the work with blanks that I've done over the years.
Wow, man. Well, I hope that there is some changes made. I think there will be. I hope they're not just a knee-jerk reaction. I hope there's a really thoughtful way of moving forward with it because, like, I agree with you 100%. I think there has to be some sort of position created to help the scenario because obviously there's a problem, especially with so many low-budget, non-union, situations, which I've been involved with a lot in my day. I get that, and it's a little wild west, no pun intended, because that was a Western, but it's a little bit wild west in the sense that, we'll do this. It's going to cost too much. We're not going to do that. And there has to be some sort of rules. There has
to be an accountability. And I think the way to do it is to assign a person to, overall safety.
Agreed.
As we've been during the pandemic, our COVID safety officers will give a speech, to us about mask wearing and social distancing and all that stuff. And so it's easily done. That position is easily created. And I know everything comes with a price tag, but there's no price tag as big as the one, as what Helena spent. You know what I mean?
Amen, brother. Amen. I appreciate it. I appreciate you will be willing to talk about that and bringing that out to light. Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions to ask all my guests, bro.
Yeah.
What advice would you give a young cinematographer or filmmaker trying to break into this vicious business?
Don't fucking do it.
Don't do it. Just run away. Run away, bro. Run away.
No, in actuality, I would say take a long, hard look at this industry and really think long and hard about whether you want to commit this much of your life to this, because it'll take every minute that you give it. This industry will take every minute, every hour that you give it, and then some. So think long and hard about it, and because none of them will listen to that piece of advice, I will then say, you got to get out there and work. You have to learn. As I said before, everybody on a film set, everybody in life knows something that you don't. So learn from them, and when you're new in the business, you have to just get on a set in any and every way that you can, because you'll learn more in a day on set, being that fly on the wall, than you will in a year of film school, at least in terms of the day-to-day hands-on practical way of telling stories, and that's what it all comes down to.
Absolutely. No, I learned more doing my internship at Universal Studios Florida than I did in going to my college. I would skip school just to go and hang out on the stages and just watch the grips go untangle that cable. And I'm like, all right, this is so cool. You mean that big pile over there that's been sitting there since 1976? Yeah, that pile of cable? Sure. Okay, sure. Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
I think the longest lesson it took me to learn is to get out of the way, and that there is an elegance and simplicity, and don't light things just to light them. You got to serve the story. You have to be telling the story, or all the experience and all the knowledge that you have is irrelevant, and all the slick lighting that you can do is irrelevant, unless you're serving the story. If you want to be, if you want to shoot just slick images, then do commercials. Absolutely. Because that's what they're all about. And that in and of itself is telling a story as well. It's telling you the story of how to buy Bud Light or whatever it is. And so it has to be flashy and in your face and high key and whatever else it is. But just tell the story and otherwise get out of the way. Be the silence in between the notes.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I gotta say Blade Runner. That's one of the films that got me into this business, into this industry. And not only do I think it's a great movie, but it looks amazing, and its look is relentlessly devoted to its story. You know what I mean? It's creating that world of, what was it, 2019 Los Angeles?
Not too far off.
Where are flying cars, Alex? I want flying cars.
Hey, listen, man. I'm still waiting for the Jetsons, man. Yeah. Come
on. But it is relentlessly devoted to its story. The look of it is. After that, it's hard to 3 favorite movies. There are so many. Number 2, I'd say everything that Conrad Hall ever shot. Everything and just about anything. I've been devoted to studying his work for a long time, and
he did Bobby Fischer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, and it's, again, talk about somebody who was relentlessly devoted to telling the story. It's some of the things that he did with his lighting are still blow my mind, and I don't know how he did it or where where the idea came from, and I don't know that he knew either. It seems like he was somebody that didn't shoot from the hip, but it all came from the gut, from the heart.
He was channeling somebody.
He was channeling something. That's for sure. And so I think that takes up my next 2 answers. I think all of his movies. Otherwise, it's so hard. When you choose something like Citizen Kane, you choose something like 1917. Even
there's too many. But that's a good. That's a good start. And can you tell us what you're up to next?
I'm prepping a new Disney Plus series. Yet to be announced.
Announced.
Series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So it's going to be the Jar Jar series. I know what it is. It's the Jar Jar series. You can just, you don't even have to admit it and know it's the Jar Jar series.
I'm not going to admit it.
Brother man, it has been an absolute honor and privilege talking to you, my friend. It has been so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us and the tribe today, and continued success, brother. You're an inspiration out there for us, man. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.